Hey everyone, welcome back to the FPB podcast. Gerry, Ahern, Mike Szvetitz here, and it's going into week 6 of the NFL football season, week 7 of college football. Gerry, we're halfway through college football, coming up a little bit more than a quarter of the way through the NFL season, and we've talked about it all year, just how kind of crazy things are going. But I think in college football more than anything else, things are starting to settle out a little bit. NFL is still, to me, it and maybe it's like this every year, but it seems like this year it's a little bit more parity. Maybe it's we're putting too much stock in some teams and not enough in other teams, but it feels like it's a little bit more volatile normally than this part of the year because we only have one undefeated team, and it's not one that I don't think anybody really ever thought it would be. And we have teams that were supposed to do well, not doing well, teams that weren't supposed to do well, doing well, all that stuff, which we'll get to. But let's start with college football, Gerry. Coming into this weekend, we've got probably, I think, the biggest top 25, especially top 10 slate we've seen all year. We've got, conference seasons really getting into the grind now, mid-October going into November. This is where, champions are made, to use the cliche, but also we've got some serious top 10 games coming up. Alabama, number 3, at number 6, Tennessee. You got number 10, Penn State, at number 5, Michigan. Then you got in the top 13, Oklahoma State's 8, TCU's 13. Florida State's hosting the number 4 Clemson. They're only 3.5-point dogs on that one. And then you've got 2 top 10 teams who are road dogs. You got Oklahoma State's a dog to TCU, and then USC's a dog to Utah. So it's going to be a big college football weekend. What are you looking forward? What are some of the games that you're looking forward to this weekend?
All the aforementioned, starting with Alabama at Tennessee, the Tide given 7.5. Bryce Young's probably going to be back. They seem to do pretty well without him, although they were certainly tested by A&M last week. Needed a goal line stand to stave off the Aggies. Jimbo loses the NIL Bowl there with Nick, but going to be a crazy atmosphere in Knoxville, and Hooker v. Young will be a good matchup to watch. I like the Tide to come away with their 16th straight win in the series.
Yeah, would be they have Tennessee has not won since 2006 in Knoxville.
Right. Then you got, you mentioned Michigan at home. They're given 7 to Penn State. Interesting to see, as Michigan hasn't really played anybody great yet.
Right.
And I don't know that Penn State is great, but they're certainly the best competition Michigan has seen thus far.
Yeah, Michigan struggled against Indiana on Saturday. I mean, I watched that.
They did, and and Maryland. I mean, they've got some chinks in the armor a little bit that they're going to have to shore up. But I think J.J. McCarthy will break out against Penn State, and you'll see that as a cover for the blue. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma State is getting 3.5, as you mentioned, at home against TCU. Even though they're the higher ranked team and playing at home, that's going to be a good one to watch. I think Oklahoma State has flown a little bit under the radar with everybody watching the SEC teams and the Big Ten teams. We'll see how good they are. TCU has surprised a lot of people as well, but winning that big one against Kansas last week in Lawrence, but I think they're in trouble in Stillwater. And then what might be the game of the night will be the late game. With Utah given 3.5 against USC.
Yeah.
I think USC is the team that has the weapons to play with and beat anybody. But we'll see, given that Utah, I think, is a team that plays great defense, has established itself over the past couple of seasons as being consistent. Had the hiccup at Florida. I mean, no shame in losing in the swamp to an SEC team, but I like SC to cover or to win that one and pull the on paper upset as well.
Yeah, I think obviously I'm looking at those games, and let's start with the Alabama Tennessee game real quick. I wrote about earlier in the summer when we were talking about win predictions.
Oh, I knew you were going to bring it up.
I want to put it out there. I just want to put it out there that Alabama's only loss this season, in my preseason prediction, was going to be to Tennessee in Rocky Top. The way that the Vols are playing, Hendon Hooker is a Heisman contender, a legitimate Heisman contender, according to the odds. We wrote about it earlier this week.
This week,
he won't win it. It'll be C.J. Stroud, but I'm telling you, Hendon Hooker plus 1,100 odds. He's past Bryce Young, past Caleb Williams, your guy at Southern Cal. I like Tennessee here. I like their offense. They're the number one offense in the conference when it comes to yards per game. They're also scoring, and Hooker has not thrown an interception. And Alabama and their defense thrives off of turnover margin and really putting their foot on your neck. I don't know if they're going to have that opportunity with Young coming back. I bet you he'll play. So we'll see two Heisman Trophy candidates going against each other. This Alabama team is not the Alabama team of last year. It's not the Alabama team.
No.
They're still winning. They're winning closer games. Texas, you mentioned A&M. But this is a Tennessee team that's playing with a lot of swag. And, Josh Heupel's got them going. I think they win. And I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout, but I think it's going to be Tennessee's going to win going away.
Well, this is your chance to be right. I mean, you've been touting this all season long, and you're glowing. I can see the absolute glow from the dome.
Yep.
Notre Dame is not the Golden Dome. Mike Szvetitz is the Golden Dome. But, you pointed out the key stat, which is Hooker, 10 TD passes to 0 interceptions. He hasn't faced a defense like Alabama's yet. They got a lot to prove. The Tides played a couple close games with Texas and with A&M. But I'm telling you, they're going to be ready to play going to Knoxville.
Yeah, and that 7.5 surprises me. I think that's too much. I would say 3.5, 4.
That's a good chance to fade the public, right? I think the game potentially Tennessee, if nothing else, covers there, but we'll see. I had the score almost right on the A&M game last week, and Alabama was a much bigger favorite in that game. And still, needed the last second goal line stand to hang on.
We talked about Penn State at Michigan, 10 versus 5, two Big Ten teams. It's nice to see Big Ten teams in the top 10. You got 3 of them now. Ohio State's obviously on a bye this week. They're number 2. But, Penn State being in the top 10, Michigan, I was not impressed. I've got Michigan winning this game, but I was not impressed by the way they played against Indiana. I was really impressed with Indiana, but I thought Michigan came out flat. I know Mike Hart had that seizure on the sideline, their coach, and I know that had a lot to do with kind of probably how they played. They came back out of halftime, took care of business. But this Michigan team's got to get it together. They got to run the football, and they got to make sure that they're handling because Penn State's got that veteran quarterback. Clifford's been there for 17 years. I think, he knows how to play in the big house. I got Michigan winning, but I think Penn State gives him, if James Franklin can get out of his own way, and you talk about terrible clock management and not, but I think if Penn State can hang with Michigan, I think Michigan wins, but that's going to be a really good game in the big house.
Well, I think, again, you bring up the key facet of the game, which is Michigan's running game, and Blake Corum, arguably the best back in the country, not just from a getting into the end zone standpoint, but from the ability to make plays and break plays. I think he's probably, setting the table for J.J. McCarthy to throw the ball a little bit more. And I think that'll be the difference in that one.
Yeah. So it's going to be, I tell you what, that slate's going to look good. I think the big, Georgia's 38.5-point favorites over Vanderbilt in Athens. I think that's a walkover for Georgia. Clemson, only 3.5 against Florida State at Doak Campbell. I like Clemson here big. I don't think Florida State can hang. And then we talked about that. The Auburn, Ole Miss, 14.5. I think Ole Miss is going to be by 30. This program at Auburn is a shell of what it was.
Does Harsin make it to halftime?
They're not gonna fire him. That's not the Auburn way. They won't fire him in the middle of the season, but he's a lame duck, that's for sure.
Not even with some of these guys who are waiting in the wings. Not even with Matt Rule ready to come on down.
You're not going to bring somebody in right now. I mean, can you? I mean, would you, if you were you're
not going to bring him in now, but you could cut the deal now and cut your losses.
I think you could do what they did in Virginia Tech did, and it's a different scenario when Frank Beamer announces retirement. Whit Babcock, the AD, went after Justin Fuente, who was at Memphis, and they really got the deal done. And then as soon as they announced the retirement, boom, and that's for a beat writer, as you know, Gerry, that's the best case scenario. Coach leave, coach come in. You don't want to have this long, elongated coaching search. Maybe that's what they do with Rule. Maybe that's what they do with some of these other openings. But I think Auburn, if you're asking me, they will not fire Harsin until the end of till after they get beat, after Alabama beats them by 60 in the Iron Bowl.
I just wonder if it's a keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, seeing what's gone on at some other programs already, whether it's Paul Chryst getting the Ziggy at Wisconsin or what have you. I mean, people aren't waiting around anymore.
Well, and the fact that Auburn's AD got earlier this year, or they parted ways. But Rich McGlynn, the interim athletic director, I covered Auburn for 10 years. Rich is a guy that kind of keeps it by the book, and I don't know if they're going to really fire him, even with all the fires going on, unless some of the boosters, some of the board comes in and says, I think they're going to route him out to the end of the year. But
well, in the era of NIL and the era of boosters having more control of things, such as the contract of Mel Tucker at Michigan State, for example, I think we're going to see even more of a Wild West type approach. And they have a lot more power than they ever did, and the NCAA has no power.
And you're absolutely right, and that's a great point, because you wouldn't see coaches get got in the middle of the year like this. They were lame ducks, maybe a couple conferences, but you're not. We're at 5 or 6 now, and it's just and it's going to keep increasing, obviously, as you do keep up with the Joneses. Let's move to the NFL, Gerry. Big games coming up this week in the NFL. Obviously, the Bills at the Chiefs. You got a replay of that, the AFC Championship, or not the championship game, but the divisional playoff last year. Mahomes, Allen. We'll talk about that. But first, I want to get into the Eagles, the only undefeated team left. Jalen Hurts is playing really, really well. They got Dallas. They host Dallas this week. They're right now currently 4.5-point favorites over the Cowboys. Cowboys are 4-1. Eagles are 5-0. The Giants 4-1. The NFC least or the NFC beast? What's going on in the NFC right now when it comes to those three teams?
Well, I mean, it's a story of the quarterbacks, right? I mean, you've got the situation obviously in Dallas with Prescott being knocked out, Cooper Rush coming in, playing admirably, winning every game that he's been the starter. Looks like Dak is ready to go again. I mean, Hurts has obviously just been phenomenal for Philadelphia, and has put them in that position. So, you're as we learned with Miami and Tua Tagovailoa, you're a couple snaps away from being the best team or the worst team, depending on who plays and who doesn't. The Patriots saw it with Mac Jones too. They've got a little bit better backup in Bailey Zappi, but as far as the NFC East, tough to tell yet on the Giants, given who they played. They got Green Bay this weekend, I believe. So that's going to be interesting. That's the Jets, sorry, our New York team. But Baltimore will be a good challenge for them, to be sure.
Yeah, and the Giants got Baltimore. They're 5.5-point dogs at home to the Ravens. Also New York, I think, is 4-1 against the spread this season. And the team that's undefeated against the spread, the Atlanta Falcons, they're 5.5 underdogs to San Francisco, who comes to Atlanta this weekend. And I'm rolling. I'm going to keep with the Falcons until they lose. I get spread. I think San Francisco wins straight up, but the Falcons cover the 5.5. Let's go to the big one. Chiefs, Bills, Mahomes, Allen. I hope this game isn't a dud with all the hype, everything from last year's game. I don't know if you could have I think last year's playoff game was probably the most exciting, the best high school. It looked like a high school game with all the scoring and running down there, but it was the best professional football game I've seen in a long, long, long time, maybe ever. Can it live up to the hype again this year, going into week 6 with both teams suffering one loss to teams they shouldn't have lost to, and they're both rolling right now?
For sure. I mean, and I think it will. I mean, Kansas City obviously struggled a little bit with the Raiders last weekend, before stepping on the pedal and making it the, Travis Kelce show with 4 TDs there. Allen and company have been waiting for this one since they walked off the field, losing that coin toss. So I think it's going to be an exciting game. I think it'll be a shootout, and I think the Bills will prevail.
Yeah, I got the Bills right now. They're 2.5, 3-point favorites, depending on the line or depending on the book. And, even though they're in Arrowhead, Kansas City got all they wanted from the Raiders on Monday night. And Kelsey's just such the difference maker. And Mahomes, they've got such weapons. They're veterans. They've been there before. They know how to make plays. But so the Bills. And Gabriel Davis having a huge game last week. Josh Allen, we know how well he is. I think they can run the football a little bit more, and take some pressure off of Allen a little bit because Kansas City's going to be coming after him. It's going to be a good one, and that's on Sunday. Looking forward to that one, and another NFL slate where you've got underdogs looking to keep going. Right now, the underdogs are 60% against the spread this season so far through 5 weeks of the NFL. How long will that last? Who knows? But if you're betting underdogs and you're riding on that, you're hitting at a 60% clip, which is way better than what I'm doing this season. So instead of going with chalk, we might just go all underdogs just to see if we
I think that's part of the reason the whole protecting the quarterback thing is becoming such a point of emphasis. Because like I said, you lose your starting quarterback in the National Football League, that dynamic changes everything.
Yeah.
And we've seen it in Miami, seen it in New England. We're going to see it other places. If it happened, God forbid, to a Philadelphia, they'd be in trouble. If it happened in a Green Bay, they'd be in trouble. It happened in San Francisco. Fortunately, Garoppolo was around with, experience under his belt. Right. But that changes everything. And that's why, some of these things have been flipped to the underdog's favor.
Yeah. And you could say New Orleans as well with James Winston, but then Taysom Hill comes in and scores 4 touchdowns, accounts for 4 touchdowns last week. There's always that one game when you have a new quarterback, you're trying to adjust, and they have it. But consistently, once you can get film on the guy, like you mentioned, it's a completely different story. So
remember when Matt Flynn came in relief of an injured Rodgers in Green Bay a few years back, and he suddenly became the hot, free agent candidate because he won a couple of games. I mean, I don't know that Cooper Rush is headed in that direction, but certainly he's getting a lot of pub for being a quality game manager, if nothing else. So not only is there money to be made on the betting front, there's money to be made in free agency for these guys who get a chance in these situations.
And that's what you want out of a backup quarterback, to come in, manage the game, keep you close till the starter gets back. And everybody talking about should Dak not start over Rush? Come on. That's trash. But you want that in a backup quarterback to come in and be able to do that. You don't have too many Tom Brady's sitting on the bench. There's a reason that they're backups, and the reason the starters are the starters now. Teams that are struggling, we could mention a lot of them who don't have a quarterback even as their starter. We're seeing that also play out because it is a quarterback league. We saw that with Ron Rivera throwing Carson Wentz under the bus in Washington.
And then apologizing yesterday. We're cool. What went wrong, Coach? Quarterback? Yeah, can you be any more blunt than that?
Just being honest. All right, keep it here. FrontPageBets.com all week. We'll head into week 6 of the NFL, week 7 of college football. It's going to be a great weekend, so keep it here. FrontPageBets.com. We'll be back next week with our FPBcast. For Gerry, I'm Mike. Thanks for watching.